I looked around and I saw I've got 55 people in the room, and I thought, I missed when we crossed 50. By the way, I was driving my truck yesterday, my Ford Explorer, crossed 10,000 miles for the first time in my newer Ford Explorer, so that's kind of nice. In the house, Kimberly, Daniel, sometimes I listen to myself, MD, Hofsty, Mark Miller, Pedro de Pacas, retired butcher boy, what of? And 69 Cornet 500. Yeah, thanks for the story about the copper stolen from the radio station. A couple of my favorite topics, radio stations, and I hate to hear about those copper thefts, but I do talk about them when they happen. Sometimes I listen to myself, to Paul 31, good friend of mine, Mrs. Teresa 1999. Jay Klein is going to build is it Jay Klein's going to build a sauna today? I saw somebody's going to build one, and of course the sauna is a really, really hot room. And right now I've got a lot of heat where I'm at. Yeah. So the thought of going sitting in a hot room doesn't do a whole lot for me. So Devin Bound, Chili 65 here. Wherever you are, send it our way. Yesterday, got 2 inches of rain in 1 hour. 2 inches of rain, 1 hour. So that the world was dry. Then the rains came and washed the crops away. And then there was this much water doing all kinds of damage, flooding, washing out roads, knocking down trees and stuff. It was crazy. Hey, Alethea's in the house. MD Hofsty says, hey, wonder if Dylan Hollis will show up in one of your live streams. Dylan Hollis, I did the video about him, wrote to me a long time ago, back when I was probably just a year or two into doing this YouTube thing. He said, hey, Steve, I love listening to your show. I'm from Bermuda, but I've gone to a school in America to study jazz piano. And he had a very nice, sent a picture of his car and very nice note and all this. And then he sent me a book about a week or two ago. Turns out he's got a best-selling cookbook out right now, and it's his second book. And he's doing quite well for himself, as we like to say. So he's my hero. Jay Klein, yes, putting a sauna together, Honeydew Project. Remember, it is a sauna, not sauna. Sauna. I know people say, but Steve, you don't like people correcting you on pronunciations. I tend to over-pronunciate things. But sauna is the only word in the Finnish language that's considered to have been adopted so that when you say the word sauna, you don't have to say, which is a Finnish steam bath. And so because it's the only word I get to correct people on for being Finnish, that's something I'm going to do. Hey, Roxanne's in the house. Happy summer, Steve. It's definitely the dog days of summer. Yes, it is. You always wonder why the dogs got blamed for it. I actually know why. It has to do with Sirius, the dog star, and so on. But we won't go there today. Somebody else asked about whether the VinWiki video, I think it's Scott Summers, when the VinWiki videos will go up. I visited Ed Bolian recently down there in Georgia. And we went to lunch in one of his Lamborghinis. And we had lunch at a restaurant owned by John Taffer. John Taffer. You walk in the door and there's this big painting of John Taffer, and you expect him to start yelling at you. But the food was really, really good. HBO Diver. Rudy says, what's your take on last night's strike? You know something? I got in so late last night. I was on the road all day yesterday. I actually am not as informed on that as I'd like to be. But I'm not sure if I would comment on it that much, simply because it is, in fact, politics and so on. William, good morning to everyone. Hope it's good news today. David Corset, I sent you a story about a drunk police officer arrested on duty for being intoxicated. Is it irony? I think so. I'll have to check that out. I was on a little bit of a trip. I took a little trip. Like I said, I went down to see Ed Bolian. I also wound up somehow over in Nashville. We got to talk about Nashville one of these days. If anybody in the house is from Nashville, let's talk. Richard Burke says, yeah, this is tropical weather. Vinny Sluga, hey, Steve. Hey, Vinny, how you doing, my friend? Mark Miller, regarding the information the police use, could that be a taking? Well, but remember, they're buying the intellectual property from people who have it legally. That's the problem, is that they have that information, and it's almost impossible, I think, to keep them from getting it. So Retired Butcher Boy. What's the name of the cookbook? It's over there. I believe it's called Baking Across America by the letter B, Dylan, as in Bob Dylan, B. Dylan Hollis, Hollis. Dan Boyd says, I saw a Viper yesterday on I-71. It was on a trailer, a red hardtop with white stripes. Yeah, see, mine's a hardtop red with no stripes, the stripe delete package. So, Sig226, just outside of Nashville here. Dude, ever go to Nashville on a Friday or Saturday night around, I don't know, dusk? There are more shrieking women than anything else. I'm not trying to be sexist here. There is no shrieking of men. There's big groups of shrieking women. I was told, oh, those are bridal parties, or what the bride goes out and does before a wedding. And occasionally you'd see somebody had some kind of headpiece on, just screaming and shrieking. And then they got these party buses that drive around so people can scream and shriek in different neighborhoods. I was trying to just mind my own business, and it was hard. So Sig226 says, yeah, avoid it like the plague. Yeah, here's the deal. I went for a walk down Broadway. I was trying to get someplace, and I thought, Broadway looks like a nice street that goes in a general direction I'm going. And I walked for 3 blocks, and I'll tell you a couple things about Nashville. Every single building has a rooftop bar. I'm surprised my hotel didn't have a rooftop. Maybe they did, a rooftop bar. But every single building, come on in. We've got a rooftop bar. A rooftop bar. Every single one of them. LFDS sounds lovely. I didn't say they weren't having fun. I'm talking about me. I'm walking along the sidewalk, and all of a sudden, 17 drunk women in a party bus go careening by, hanging out. Mexican Spec, good morning. And I know you're curious. It is the Blue Hefty / Solo Cup today. Sig226 says, yeah, Nashville has unfortunately become popular. Well, that's the thing, and it's hard to criticize the people who come to your town and spend their money. But, I actually saw a party bus that was actually like a trailer being pulled by a tractor. And it says, get plowed in Nashville, with some name of some plow company that'll drag you around on basically like a farm manure spreader. And you can drink and shriek at passersby. Sarah C, scream and shriek. There you go. Oh, LFDS is now as being sarcastic. You're not the kind of person to hang out of a party bus and scream at people going by. Yeah, Janice Ellery says Nashville is a popular bachelorette party destination. But why? Couldn't you do that in Memphis? Right now, Memphis is going, no, we don't want it. We don't want it. We don't want it. Oh, Mrs. Teresa, 1999, got some bad news. Geneva's cruising night's been canceled. Why? Why would they cancel it? Is it coming up real soon? Like, do they know something's about to happen, or do they just have a problem with something? I'm so sorry about that. Mark Wilson says one of the best things about Nashville is how much live music there is. Oh, yes. No, I agree with you. I walked by bars that had open doors, open windows, and you could hear a live band playing. And a couple of times I looked in, live band. And I love live music. I love bands. I go see a lot of shows. I saw 12 or 13 shows last year. I'm on track to do just as many this year. Big shows, little shows, you name it. And so bands need places where they can go and perform in front of live audiences. And in fact, it's more important now because the way that music is being sold and downloaded and streamed on Spotify, bands have got to make money. So live venues are really, really cool. So I agree with that. Jay Hansen, 16, nice Breitling. Yes, in fact, this is a Breitling watch. Thank you for noticing. I appreciate that. So, hey, Art S. Hi from Central Jersey. Zach, howdy, Steve and the gang. Tom says that in Memphis, bad things can happen to you. I've been to Memphis a couple times and walked down Beale Street and had some really good food. The only difference there is that there's women screaming about the good food inside the restaurants, but they're not shrieking. They're not shrieking. Mark Miller points out that strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. King, I didn't vote for you. 1970 Scout 800. I apologize about the crackling audio. There's nothing I can do about it. So it's the same microphone. It's the exact same cord. It's plugged in the exact same cord hole. It's the exact same camera. It's the exact same YouTube. It's me. I'm not crackling. It is something with the interwebs, and for which I apologize. But we don't need to have a debate about it in here much longer. Oh, Mike Lackner says, is there no Bad Axe party bus? If you drove down the street in Bad Axe, leaning out of a bus, screaming and shrieking with a beer in your hand, there'd be a whole lot of arrests going on, a whole lot of them. Now, don't get me wrong, Nashville obviously allows it. I'm sure they license these party buses. I'm sure they make them do some things on some level for safety. I don't know. Carl's Corner, hello, Steve. Bob Blah Blah says, well, there's 1,352 guitar pickers in Nashville. They can pick more notes than the number of ants on a Tennessee anthill. Janice Ellery party scene like Fort Lauderdale was in the 70s. I saw a really interesting documentary. I think it was about MTV and Fort Lauderdale and all the different things that the different cities were doing down there, because some of them wanted the business and others thought, we don't want that kind of business. And it can become a big nightmare, especially if there's too many people drinking too much alcohol at night, you know. So Zach's Aussie Pink Floyd will be here soon in Grand Rapids. Yes, I'll be there too. Roxanne, were you in Tennessee on vacation? I was doing a little business trip. I ran down to Georgia to talk to some hooved fellow about his fiddle. No, I'm just joking. I went down to see Ed Bolian at VinWiki, and I shot some videos with him, which will be upcoming. I did that back in 2020. I shot, I think, 11 videos with him, and he ran them about one a month for that whole year, which is where a lot of my subscribers came from, which I thought was pretty cool. And I was trying to get back down there to shoot some more videos, and I had a couple emergencies happen. I scheduled it and canceled it, scheduled it and canceled it. And so, you know, but I got down there this time, and so we shot some videos, hung out. We went to lunch. Like I said, I got a ride in one of his Lamborghinis, which I discovered is even more cramped than a Viper. And Ed's taller than I am. And I'm like, dude, how do you drive this thing? He's like, I love this car so much, I don't care. And it looks like he's doing this because the roof is it's too low. Oh boy. Corvette Fisher, hey, greetings from Norway. You are popular in Finland and Norway, believe it or not. I appreciate that. I get notes from both Norway and Finland and Sweden, by the way. Obviously, my last name being Finnish is spotted by some people, and I get contacted by Finns who say, hey, Lehto or Lehto, you know, what's the story? And I tell them the story. So I appreciate that. Dan Boyd says, when Street Outlaws went to Memphis, I watched and learned to never to go to Memphis. I'm trying to remember the movie. I'll think of it. Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. It was a funny movie. And there's a scene where a guy's coming back to America from London. And he's asked, do you have anything to declare? And he goes, yes, never go to England. Now, it's only funny because he had a really bad experience in England. I love England. Don't get me wrong. Josh says, you look good. You lost weight. I'm proud of you. I'm technically, I might have lost a couple pounds, but not much. I suspect the orange takes some weight off. I don't know. Ember Mist, what's today's hydration choice? Watered down Gatorade. I actually did some work this morning outside because I wanted to get out there before it got to 1,000 degrees. As of right now, it is 90 out there, 90. But when I walked outside, the first time it was 85, and it was still like morning, like early morning. I'm like, whoa. MD Hofsteve, you ever thought of hopping over to the second largest car show in Michigan, the GR Metro Cruise? I've not heard much about it. When is it? Maybe send me some information. I'd look into it. Depends on the weather as to which car I'd bring, but I could get over. That's about 3-hour drive, 2.5, 3-hour drive, something like that. Duncan Campbell, hello, Steve. Good morning from Monday. I liked it. They're checking in from the future. Checking the future. Dr. Swaggins checking. I worked in broadcast once. Even the janitors could set up the sound mixer and choose the correct sampling rates. Oh, I worked at a radio station once where the cleaning lady would come in while I was on the air, and ignorance. She had no idea what I was even doing there. And she'd walk in and start wiping down the counter. Hey, how you doing tonight? How you doing? And like the on-air, the light is on, and I'm talking. All of a sudden, hey, how you doing tonight? Hey, how's everything going? And a couple of times she was wiping the table, and she'd knock the arm off the record I was playing because yes, we were playing records. But that's my experience with the cleaning crews at radio stations. Oh. Codemeister Beats is not sure how your inputs go, but my Focusrite interface gets crackly occasionally. I just have to disconnect the USB and reconnect. Well, this thing right here, I've talked about this before. The reason I'm bobbing is that I'm trying to see the name on it. But I have an Electrovoice RE20, and there's a Shure adapter that's stuck into the XLR. And then that has a USB that goes into my computer. And so that, I never disconnect or reconnect that. And there's a green light to indicate that it's connected, okay? And also my headphones are plugged into that, so there's zero latency for the 3 people who care. But it's the exact same. It's just a USB, but I'm scared if I unplug it now, it'll screw something. I'm about to plug it back in, and hey, we got no sound. And then it'll crash the whole thing. So I apologize. Aaron Freeman, do you ever practice biathlon? Biathlon. You mean the skis and the shooting? Never tried that. Oh, unless you mean just 2 legs of a triathlon, like to bike and swim or to run and bike. I can run and bike, but swimming for speed is something I've never done before. James Chamalik is checking in from BC, and it's Kelowna. They've got some names in Canada I'm not so good at. Medicine Hat I can figure out. But Nanaimo, things like that throw me off. Even when I'm looking at it going, I'm pretty sure I know this one. Oh, boy. DePaul says the cleaning lady could have been named Janie because Howard Stern used to talk to his cleaning lady at WNBC. No, I don't remember what her name was. She lived locally in Bad Axe. There was also Michael the maintenance man from KROQ Los Angeles with Kevin and Bean years ago. Robin Hood shooting from skis sounds crazy fun. Yeah, they make it sound like it's a skill they want their people to have. So there's some countries where they really treat biathlon like it's the coolest thing ever. And don't get me wrong, I think it's an interesting exercise. You go out and you're cross-country skiing, which can be tiring, and then you stop and you got to do something that requires just perfect calm to do it right. So how do you do that, you know? So Devin bounces Kelowna or Kelowna. And Life's a Hail Mary says Kelowna. See, Devin Bound, if you're spelling things out phonetically, L-O-W looks like it should be either low or low. It's unclear. But if it's lone, like, okay, got it. Oh. MD Hofsey says it's the weekend after the Dream Cruise. Runs on the 28th Street, also known as M11. Most of the vendors set up at a local mall. Is it a big show? I'm in Grand Rapids. I'm assuming it must. Daniel Kester, I've never done snow skiing. I've done cross country, but just never downhill. I mean, I've been on cross country skis going down a hill, but not that fast. Oh boy. Zach says I haven't heard the name Kevin and Bean in so long. I'm taking the watch off. It's clanking on the desk. Kevin and Bean started their show right around the same time I started law school. And it's fascinating because they did a bunch of stuff early on that was so funny. And some of the stuff they did, it was just dumb. But they were experimenting. And that was the first time they'd ever been together as a show. As they pitched it to K-Rock, and they'd go, we've never done a show together. But they said, okay, sure. We'll let you do this. And Kevin and Bean were very, very funny. I used to listen when I was running in the morning and on my drive into school. And so I'd hear them for a couple hours every morning. Aaron Freeman, did your ancestors move to America before 1917? Yes. Is there a cutoff there for something? Do I get to stay? Richard Burke says we can blame the Kraken on Neil Diamond and Rosie. Irie says real men hunt with pointy sticks. Pointy sticks. You have to remember that in the escalation of the arms race, at one point in time, people fought by hand. And then they came up with things like knives and swords. And then they came up with, like bows and arrows. But then somebody came up with a shield. And it goes like this. And believe it or not, one of the earliest advances that made a difference was when some side came up with longer poles. I'm not making this up. You look at the history of the armaments as they progressed, I'm talking thousands of years ago, and there'd be groups of men holding shields and guys behind them holding these things that look like pole vault poles. And they're marching towards you. What are you going to do? Because you shoot at them with like a slingshot or an arrow, it hits the pole or it hits the shield. But they're coming at you with these poles. What do you do? Next thing you know, the other side's got bigger poles. Dan Boyd, catapults. Oh boy. And someone whose name is upside down and backwards says range is the greatest determining factor in combat. I hear you. Janice Ellery, the Romans. The Romans. Yeah. Oh, Padre, my son and daughter-in-law are driving from South Georgia to Lansing today for her mother's funeral. Wish them well. Yeah, safe driving. And I just did that drive. I'm here to tell you, you're going to hit some traffic and construction. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. There is some construction and some slowdowns in and around Cincinnati in particular. Just if you're using a mapping software, it's going to tell you, oh, upcoming 20-minute delay, and it'll all turn red. And you'd be like bumper to bumper. And I went through it on the way down and the way back. And both times it was like at non-rush hour. It doesn't even matter. So the thought of living in Cincinnati around rush hour really makes me wonder. So, Daniel Kester, did you see the FAA video? The one you sent me or a different one? I saw the one you sent me. Watch everything you sent me, my friend. MD Hofsey says, when I attended, I worked in the street during the event. It was bumper to bumper for miles. Not sure now, but I would think it's the same or greater. Yeah, no, and same with the Woodward Dream Cruise. You can't see the whole thing in one day, which actually is kind of weird to think about, but that is, in fact, the problem. Dan Boyd says Cincinnati is a perennial choke point. School Bus Mike, hello, Stephen. All happy hot summer to you and all from your friend Mike in Westland. Currently able to hear the thunder from the Blue Angels out at Willow Run. Oh, that's cool. Willow Run's it's a smaller airport, but it's out near where Ford used to make airplanes in World War II. They've got a cool air museum out there, and they do air shows once in a while. Very, very cool. So the gentleman who I said his name is upside down and backwards says, I'm not upside down and backwards. The world is. Cyberdox is a nice trebuchet will launch you over the border. Of course, the trebuchet is like a catapult, but they put a leveraged lever, another lever on it, or a sling, so that when the main arm swings, it swings, and then the leverage does a double swing. I know that my brother and some of his friends built some trebuchets and were doing things like throwing pumpkins, and you can throw them quite far. Dan Boyd says you can take 71 through Cincinnati and then jog back over to 75. I was starting to wonder about whether there's a way around it, but it didn't occur to me until I was stuck in it. Tigerman 99515, great tribute to Brian Wilson you did. I did a live stream about him the day he passed away, or at least the day they announced it. I grew up in Southern California. Beach Boys were a big part of summers. Never understood how Midwesterners reacted to them. I know a lot of people like myself are big fans. You don't need to be near an ocean to appreciate summer music. Although I guess it's harder, relate to the actual surf stuff. But they moved on. They did move on to some other stuff. Endless Summer is one of the greatest 2-disc album sets ever put out. I challenge you to like name 5 that wouldn't contain that as one of the 5. Irie says, I love traffic jams. It's how I met my wife. She offered me a cookie. That's how it all started. Was she in another car or just walking through the traffic jam? Just happened to bring some cookies? Jim F., do you go to the range? You know, I used to. I lived right down the street from one. Not lived. I worked right down the street from one, and I had a friend who loved going there. And he'd say, "Hey, Steve, I brought my stuff in today. Let's go. Let's go shooting at lunch." And we did it all the time, but it's been a little while. Been a little while. Yeah, Richard Burke points out the Beach Boys also had a lot of cool car songs. Yeah, cars and drag racing. They did. They did. But you know, some of that was their earlier stuff. So, oh, Irie, side by side for miles. Yes, in another car when she offered him the cookie. Oh. Alethea says, I wanted to see you did the perfect movement with your hands when you said jewel thieves in your video on Friday. I'm trying to remember what I said. I remember talking about there was a time when like every bad detective movie or TV show had a guy trying to catch jewel thieves. And they talked about jewel thieves as if it was like such an exotic crime that it almost shouldn't be illegal. Like guilty of capturing my heart. You know, and it's like why are so you steal a diamond that's worth $10 million retail. Who's going to buy it? They're not going to give you 10 million for it. And if they have it, what are they going to do? Chop it up? Now it costs them money. So it's not the most liquid thing you can steal. But anyways, I'd gone off on a tangent, I think. John Michael Karma says, my Woody's outside covered with snow. New York's a lonely town when you're the only surfer boy around. Of course, that's a song by the Fleetwoods. And even though I just said that, someone's going to go, oh, that's not the Beach Boys. When I did the live stream, somebody mentioned Jan and Dean having performed a song by the Beach Boys. And I said, yeah, they were friends. The guys were all friends. Jan, Barry, Dean Torrance, and the rest of the Beach Boys were all friends. And somebody then asked me about another Jan and Dean song. And I jokingly said, what, the Anaheim Azusa Cucamonga Sewing Circle Book Review and Timing Association? And then somebody else said, Jan and Dean's not the Beach Boys. And never quite got the thing that we were just talking about tangential topics. Tigerman99515, same with rare art. No, absolutely. There's the Gardner Art Gallery that got robbed, and they stole a bunch of paintings which you could not put back in the market. And so the thinking was either that some really, really rich criminal wants to put them in his bedroom so he can look at them, or maybe they were going to be used for some kind of ransom, but they have not turned up after all these years. And it's highly unlikely that the people who stole them got anything near what they're worth in exchange for them if they did anything with them. So Alethea says she likes heist movies. Heist movies. I stopped watching all those Oceans movies because it got to the point where we're gonna have 35 people here you'll recognize. So it's Oceans 35. And they're pulling this triple double back inside out and so on scam. And it's like, and I don't know, it just seems so contrived to me. So Daniel Kester says it was a topic in a Columbo episode. I'm pretty sure it's a topic in every episode of every detective, thing that they had going back to probably the mid 60s. Jason Brindamauer is late. Let's all shame him for being late. Robert Hawkshurst, do you ever take your cars to places where you can legally ring them out? I've not taken either of my cars to a track. I have not done that. A couple reasons is one is that there's not really a track near me that would be handy. Second of all is my insurance people might not like it. And number three, you're going to say, but how would they find out? Well, I wouldn't be able to shoot videos about it then, would I? And at which point, why am I doing it? So no, I just haven't done that yet. SKS Hugo says some people steal for vengeance. Isn't that the name of a roller coaster, the Steel Vengeance? Was that intentional? And another thing said he had to take a 3-minute break to listen to Sloop John B. And we also mentioned that during the live stream and had several people go, "Oh, they didn't write that song, Steve. They didn't write." And they performed it. It's a traditional song. They arranged it. Other people had performed it also, but their version of it is stellar. And that is, in fact, a Beach Boys song, even if they didn't write it. Yeah, Mark Miller says that GPS might be taken by track racing. If I got my phone with me, oh my gosh, look what this guy does. Now, Prince Albert says you could presumably buy track insurance. I'd be curious. Cornet 500 says, yeah, but it's pricey. I don't know much about that. Never looked at it. Yeah, Padre says, don't bring your cell phone racing. Oh, boy. Jason Brindamar, how many people here are watching are not Michiganders? I also like Michiganian myself, but I suspect that not a lot of people in here proportionately are actually from Michigan. Got 324 people in the room, by the way. Dan Boyd says, yeah, put a Faraday cage in your car. So you could actually probably make a Faraday cage glove box. I'm surprised somebody hasn't done that yet. Where you just throw it in your glove box and know that it's off the grid now. Lou58 Lou says Steel Vengeance is in fact a record-breaking hyper roller coaster located at Cedar Point, Sandusky, Ohio, where our daughter is working today, working the wind seeker. If in fact it's not too windy, ironically. Kyle Han, have you been to Nürburgring? No, I have not. I've never been to Germany. I've been to Switzerland. I've been to England and France, but not to Switzerland. Mark Miller says his mom was born in Detroit. Carl's Corner says Dr. Demento is retiring. I have not heard his show in so long because I don't listen to the radio that much. I did listen to some satellite radio over the weekend. On long drives, I'll do that. Old Paint 71, 25 miles from the Wisconsin-Michigan border. Whereabouts are you? Are you near Iron River? MD Hofsty is, in fact, a Michigander. Greg Lehto is a Michiganian. Thank you, my friend. Good to see you. Greg's my tech guy. If he tells me something about a computer, I believe it. I don't care. I don't get a second opinion. I don't need a second opinion when I'm talking to Greg. Greg's is the one and only opinion I need. Mark Miller says, Mom used to sing Hail to the Victors. I have to tell you, one of the most amazing things in my life is I've got dear friends whose daughter just graduated from the University of Michigan after 4 years in the marching band. As a member of the marching band, she got to go to every single Michigan game. In the 3 years they were in the playoffs, and the 4th year, when they weren't in the playoffs, they beat Michigan State, Ohio State, and Alabama in the bowl game. So those are the 4 years she got to attend U of M. I told her, you realize your life from here is just downhill. You can't top that. So, Old Paints in Crivets, Wisconsin. Never heard of Crivets, Wisconsin. 40 miles south of Iron Mountain. Okay, I know where that is. Ronald Watilko grew up in Taylor, Michigan. My mother taught in Taylor for a few years, a long, long time ago. David Phillips, Michigan resident here. DePaul 31, I dated a girl from the UP. I only laugh. I was at a bar in New York City in 1984, maybe, or 85. And I overheard some people talking, and the guy mentioned something about Michigan. And I said, oh, are you from Michigan? And he goes, yeah, but you've never heard of it. What do you mean I've never heard of it? And he goes, where I'm from, you've never heard of. And I go, I've heard of everything in Michigan. You can't. He goes, I'll buy you a drink. And by the way, I don't drink, so he didn't know he's making a dumb bet. But he said, I'll buy you a drink if you can tell me where my hometown is. I go, great. What is it? He goes, Bruce Crossing. I go, Bruce Crossing. Cross the bridge, turn left, and drive about 2 hours. He goes, get him whatever he wants. Bruce Crossing. I'm like, that's an easy one. I know some smaller towns. You might know. It's Bruce Crossing. Come on. Greg Hansen checking in from Marquette in the UP, or .UP as some people say. Prince Albert says, I was born in Georgia, moved to Texas. The Navy sent me to Japan. Now I'm in Virginia. I don't even know what I am anymore. MD Hofsty says, I just checked the Dr. Demento show. It'll end on October 11th of this year. From what has been reported, it'll be a top 40 of all-time songs in the show history. The question is, will that be the top 40 requested songs from his perspective or the top 40 weirdest songs? Because he had songs that went on to become hits that he launched, including Weird Al stuff. Tigerman 99515, did Detroit get to keep all the valuable art when they came out of bankruptcy? Yes. And here's the thing. Detroit, the DIA, Detroit Institute of Arts, has in its collection a bunch of really valuable paintings, Van Goghs and so on. And so when they were going into bankruptcy, people pointed out that one thing that creditors can do is demand that you liquidate what you've got to pay them. And the bankruptcy judge and the trustee overseeing the bankruptcy got together and said, okay, what can we do to preserve that stuff? Because we don't want Detroit to come out of bankruptcy missing like its cultural heritage. And so what they did is they got a bunch of almost like investors and so on to step up. And then they got some of the people who were owed money to agree to take discounts. And they worked out a deal, a bargain, where Detroit got to keep the DIA intact. And at one point in time, there was an appraiser who showed up, and their job was to, what will this be worth if we sell it all? And that, scared a lot of people. And I'll admit, it's been a couple of years since I've been to the DIA, but it's one of those things that is just a cultural epicenter in Detroit. It's amazing. Lois Berger, I am from Michigan, but reside in Hill Country, Texas since 1980. Ken Wittenberg, Pentwater, Michigan. The DIA had powerful lawyers. Well, there were good lawyers on all sides. And it was Detroit's, at the time, was the largest municipal bankruptcy in history, I believe. It may have been topped since then, but Matt Atwar says, I saw someone in Oklahoma wearing an Iowa shirt. Asked him where he's from. He said, you wouldn't know it. Turns out my parents lived across the street from his parents growing up. That's the whole point. Prodigal Stranger, DIA, the Detroit Institute of Arts. Engineering Success, at least didn't sell their parking meters, or did they? No, I don't believe they did. Of course, you're referring to Chicago, which did a really strange and probably bad deal on their parking meter income, where they basically paid, they actually were paid some money today for the future earnings of the parking meters going forward. And it turns out that they probably got snookered in the deal. Jay Reeder, why were you interested in Bobby Isaac? For one thing, he drove a Dodge Charger Daytona in 1969 and 1970. I always loved those cars. And I also thought it was very, very sad that he won the national championship and almost nobody knows who he is today. And so I wrote a book about him. Tigerman 99515, doing any metal detecting recently? No, I have not. I have not done any recently. If I spot any obvious places, I'll try it. I've got my detector out. It's all charged up. I got everything ready to go. Just haven't seen anything obvious pop up yet. AMZ, it's my dog's birthday. Come to the party. Just made some brisket. It turned out great. Happy birthday to your dog. It's funny. I had Milo and Wolfie, my two Shetland sheepdogs. I didn't know their actual birth dates I may have had the information someplace on some paperwork, but I always think of the day I get them as the important date, not the day they were born. I wasn't there when they were born. So, oh boy. David Humphreys was in Hillsdale, Michigan last Sunday, took a steam train excursion, the Tri State excursion from Eden, Ohio. Yeah, there's a bunch of trains here in Michigan, and some of them still run. Very, very cool that you can jump on and take a little ride. I've never done that one there before, though. Yeah, Richard Burke reminds us that parking meters played a role in the opening scene to Cool Hand Luke. Oh. The Prodigal Stranger, Steve could do a metal detecting show video with Gary Drayton. I've never met Gary Drayton or the guys from Curse of Oak Island, although they are from Michigan, the Lagina brothers. But I'd be so tempted to go, but there's no treasure, right? And I have a feeling he probably couldn't even bring himself to admit what he knows to be true, but don't want to go down that rabbit hole today. Jerry Dodge, have you ever been to Cedar Point, which we talked about earlier with Steel Vengeance? Ever been there? Twice a year for me, but I'm getting too old for it. Well, dude, if you're too old at 39, I'm done. But I've not been to Cedar Point since the 1980s. I know people who go all the time, but I used to really enjoy roller coasters and fair type rides. I don't enjoy standing in line. Now, I understand you can buy a fast pass. And then it's like, wait a second, I get to jump in front of these people who are all going to hate me? It just doesn't seem right to me. I haven't gone in a long time. Mike Lackner, speaking of dogs, is it illegal for a dog to ride in a driver's lap? That's an interesting question. I will admit I used to actually drive occasionally, and Milo would want to be in my lap. And if I didn't let him sit in my lap, I'm not sure what would have happened. I never found out. So I think a police officer could give you a ticket for it and say that it was some kind of obstructed or distracted driving because the dog could interfere with your ability to drive the car. Heaven forbid you got in an accident, though, especially with an airbag deployed. It wouldn't end well for anybody. Old Pain 71 says there's a metal detecting show in Michigan starring an ex-WWE, WWF wrestler. I've seen a couple episodes of it a long time ago, and I'm skeptical of some of the shows I've seen on television about metal detecting because in real life, most metal detecting involves hours and hours and hours of digging bad targets to find good targets. And so I know some guys who shoot YouTube videos about it, and I believe them because the ones I've seen and the ones I follow actually will. It's very obvious that we found something, we filmed it, and we shut the camera off, and we hunted for some more. We found something. If you asked them, your video is half an hour long. How long are you out there? They go 8 hours, 10 hours. And I've seen some TV shows where they make it look like the guy shows up, swings his coil, found a $1,000 target, swings his coil again, found another one. And it's like, it was that easy. The fish don't jump into your boat when you're trophy fishing. Okay. So Mindbend is now claiming to be sorry for being late. And the damage is already done, my friend. Cody Prime 99F in Texas right now, 89 degrees in Ames, Iowa. This is Mindbend, and I'm showing 91 degrees. 91 degrees in Michigan. Jerry Dodge 95 in Kalamazoo. Johnny Quest, there's a restaurant in Santa Maria called Cool Hand Luke's. Devin Bound, have you seen The Detectorist? Is that the BBC show? Or is that something else? I always forget. Art asks, you didn't let Milo sit in your lap? I thought I said I did. I said if I didn't, I don't know what would happen because it never happened. Yes, Mike Wagner, the BBC comedy detectorist. No, it's very, very good. It's very. I like that show because they actually depict detectorists how they really are, and many detectorists have those kind of personalities, but they don't show them out in a field just digging up stuff that's worth tons of money just immediately. That doesn't actually happen. Fast Dog was metal detecting and found a 13th anniversary sobriety coin and located the owner that lost it years ago. He once lived in that house. That's very, very cool. That's very, very cool. I've done the videos. I found that belt buckle that I sold for a lot of money, which is pretty cool. And I found some other stuff, but I have found jewelry for people who lost jewelry, and I've returned jewelry to people who've lost it. Um, I know some people who found some other very, very cool things. So you can find neat stuff. Lon Willis, are you licensed in Ohio? No, I'm only licensed in Michigan. That's it. Cody Prine says I spent 8 hours on a beach and only found cans and bottle caps. I wouldn't have put in 8 hours. I'll put in a half an hour, and if a spot's not giving up stuff, I'll move or leave. I just I hate to say I get bored real easily, but you can tell. You can get a feeling for a place. Go, okay, I think there might be stuff here. But once in a while, you get this idea that, okay, the place has got no targets, or it's been picked over pretty well by other people. Tigerman 515 belt buckle episode was your best one ever, which ironically had nothing to do with the law. The birds are free says 85 in the apartment. I've got my AC set to 72, and it right now is running constantly. Javier Morales says I once found a classic treasure chest buried in the sands of Tampa Bay, packed with gold from an old pirate ship. The kind of find metal detectors dream about. Okay. Do you have photographs? What kind of gold was it? Tigerman 99515 says metal detecting in Great Britain is pretty fascinating with the regulations. Yeah, the trick is to find private property, get permission, but understand if you find anything historically significant, that they have to you have to notify authorities about it, and they might buy it from you. My understanding is they'll buy it from you and actually give you fair market value for it. But it's got to be very unusual for them to actually need it at this point. Prince Albert, is it common to have to sign an NDA when you settle a lemon law claim? Depends on the manufacturer. But usually all the NDA says is that you can tell people you filed a lawsuit, you settled it. You just can't say what you settled it for or how much. If I have a client object to that, I'll go back and say my client doesn't want to sign this. Because obviously we go to court and win, we don't have to sign one. Then they say, well, if you go to court and lose, you lose. Say, yeah, well, let's see about that. All right. Sam, as I am, anyone have any suggestions for a good entry-level metal detector? I just found out our property has survey outlined and buried metal stakes, but I enjoy the hobby. Yeah, I've actually used my metal detector to find property corners, the markers, the monuments. They're usually iron, so I've got to reconfigure how I'm thinking because I'm usually not looking for iron. But if you know roughly where they are, you can find them with a detector. Good entry-level detector, a couple $100, 300, $400 maybe. If you go below that, you're getting a toy. So Dan Shaw says it's 92, but feels like 104 here in Columbus. That is hot. Showstrom says they'll buy fair market value, but typically not as much as what you could find a buyer willing to pay. But I've heard it's not as bad. Like, here's the thing. In America, when the government takes something from you by, eminent domain, the dollar value that they're going to give you is normally below market value. You have to go to court and sue them to get, real value. But I've heard from people in England that what they're given is actually not that bad, because normally they want to put it in a museum or something. Kit Marlowe Escott, too. Ever find any live ammo? Not live ammo, but I found spent all the time. The scary part, I found it out in the woods. I've also found it in the inner city. There was a park across the street from a library on Woodward Avenue. I was over there detecting one, and I got some odd signals. I started digging up fired rounds. I'm like, oh, okay. Sean M., what's the name of the video with the belt buckle called? It's not the name that'll throw you off. I believe it's which channel it's on. Because did I move that over to the other channel? I think I did. Remember, I have another channel called Steve Lehto, Second Channel. And if you go there, I think that's where it is. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm consulting my phone. My phone knows more than I do. Yeah, so go to Steve Lehto's Second Channel, and there's a video called The Belt Buckle Story. The Belt Buckle Story. So that's the story of my belt buckle. I found a Civil War belt buckle that I sold for a large sum of money. And the funny thing is, I often meet people who ask me about detecting. I go, what have you found today? And I show them. They go, 79 cents? And I go, I found an Indian head penny. What's that worth? Well, it's a couple bucks. But, oh, that's stupid. And I go, well, yeah, but I once found a belt buckle that paid this thing off 10 times over. But it's like talking to a fisherman going, what'd you catch today? Caught a fish. Couldn't I buy one of those at the fish market? Yes, you could. Totally different things. Totally different things. Showstrom says, let me put it this way. Here you find a coin valued at roughly $100, and the U.S. would give you 50. UK would give you 80 to 90, but a private buyer might give you 100 to 120. Yeah, so it's closer. It's closer. Hey, look. The alternative is you don't tell them, you wind up in jail, because there are people who wound up in jail, or at least getting in trouble with the law because they had found things they didn't want to turn over. Randy Regal says, my favorite video is about you representing yourself and a friend over a parking ticket. Yeah. I'm not sure if I told you this or not, but we went to see a band called the Airborne Toxic Event, which I don't think they're around anymore. Really good band. They had a great album. They played at a little tiny place in Pontiac, Michigan. And right out front was where the parking meters were that I was at. So Daniel Kester says the vault for me still gets me to your second channel. Well, I whatever you call it's fine, but it's titled Steve Lehto's Second Channel. NW is pursuing law school too risky now, given how quickly AI is advancing. I don't think so. It's going to be a long time before lawyers aren't needed. What is someone really going to walk into court and put their phone on the desk and go, here, my AI is going to handle my case now? You know? The prodigal stranger says, give a man a fish he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, you get rid of him on the weekends. Matthias, greetings from Berlin. And of course, that's Berlin, Germany, my friends. Mike Lackner, where in the world would you like to detect? I would like to detect, believe it or not, in Germany. I know guys, I've spoken to people in Germany who metal detect various battle sites, both World War I and World War II. That'd be fun. Metal detecting England would be fun. Any European country where gold or silver coins were used would be fascinating, especially if you find places where it's legal and have not been picked over yet. Yard Boy Deuce, can you tell the lawyer dog story? Well, the lawyer dog story was simply a case where a guy got arrested and they read him his rights. And they said, you know, you have the right to an attorney. If you can't afford one will be appointed for you. And if you want to stop questioning any time, you just tell us you want a lawyer, we'll stop. And he goes, I like a lawyer, dog. And they started questioning him. And later in court, his attorney said he asked for a lawyer. They said, no, he asked for a lawyer, dog. And the state Supreme Court upheld it and said that lawyer dog doesn't exist. Lawyers do. And they're actually with a straight face trying to say that they don't understand that it could be, I want a lawyer, comma, dog, or I want a lawyer, dude, Or I want a lawyer, Einstein. Oh, you want a lawyer, Einstein, do you? I mean, come on. They didn't want to give the guy his relief. They just go, oh, we can't hear commas, and it's to me, it's a little crazy. Showster says, how much would you value the misplaced socket socket that I found in my yard? I find stuff like it all the time, but I already have a set. Oh. Mark Miller was the lawyer dog story from Ohio. No, I believe it was, I always get it wrong, Louisiana or Alabama. You can look up lawyer dog and it'll tell you. Art S is medically detected in North Africa or the Middle East. Yeah, Matthias says in some parts you'd have to be careful because some of the things in the ground are artifacts from the war. And yeah, we've talked about that before. If you find an anti-tank mine, you don't want to dig it up. You want to run that way. MD Hofsey says it was Louisiana. Okay, I keep thinking Alabama. Oh boy. Mexican spec the word. Sorry, for the lack of a comma. For the lack of a comma. 356 people in the room, says David Phillips. Yard Boy Deuce. Are people still sending you t-shirts? Yes. I got 2 last week. Double XL. That is XX and L. And send them to the address at the back of the videos, the end of the videos. It's a P.O. box in Atlas, Michigan. Do not send them to my office. Jay Dixon is a comma mistake. Oh. Joe Pangia, greetings from South Australia, where it's 3:23 in the morning, Monday. And we had another person, Duncan, checked in not so long ago, also from Australia. Kit Marlowe, S. Scott, too. Are you still known as the t-shirt guy in the building? Well, no, because most people don't send the t-shirts to my office because you're not supposed to. Oh, boy. Burning through the Gatorade water mixture today. I'm going 50-50. It's almost like 2-stroke gas, What's the ratio? School Bus Mike, how's your summer reading going? Looking forward to your next book review. Yeah, I just finished a book written about the is written by Anderson Cooper, co-wrote it, about the Astor family. John Jacob Astor and Brooke Astor and all of them, Astor House, Waldorf Astoria, that kind of thing. Just finished that book. Previous to that, I read a book on the Morgans, J.P. Morgan and Company. And I'm currently reading a book about the Bounty, HMS Bounty. So I'm getting pretty close there. So, Leanne, what kind of 2X? Well, double XL. Did I not say that? XX large. Yeah. If somebody wants to send me a shirt, here's the deal. Okay, I'm not asking for shirts, so don't say, hey, Steve's begging for shirts again. I can afford clothing, okay? You'll notice I don't wear a branded shirt on these live streams. But I like shirts that have place names on them, schools, because I love education. I think education is a good thing. Schools, band names, that's great. Businesses, places, landmarks, parks. I've got a t-shirt I've got that's about climbing, Castle Rock in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. People send them from schools all the time. So, but it's got to be double XL. But please do not send me anything political or obscene because I won't wear it. And I apologize. I do prefer colored shirts. White shirts look really bad on camera. And I know that there's guys right now going, Steve, you can fix that by playing with your. I don't want to be readjusting my camera for my shirt. Okay. 99% of the shirts I get work great, but I prefer colored shirts. My favorite shirt is a shirt from a school or a professional team that's blue or some kind of color. And there you go. Kit Marlowe, what charity do you donate to shirts? I haven't donated any of them yet. I still have them. I still have tons of them. Oh, Javier Morales, do you believe in ghosts? No, not really. My house is not haunted. And I don't think the office. I think the office is too boring to be haunted. I think if I was going to go haunt something, I go find something interesting to haunt. I don't think my a ghost would show up in my office and go, "This is stupid. Why is anybody here?" Steve, has anyone ever sent you a T-shirt with foul language? Oh yeah, unfortunately. And I've had some people send me shirts going, I don't know if you can wear this on camera, but I wanted to send it to you anyway. That's fine. So Showstrom says the white shirts add weight on camera, black shirts take the pounds off. That might be too true. All I know is that if I wear a bright white shirt in camera, it screws up the settings, and all my settings, as I mentioned at the top, I try not to change anything because I want the videos to always look similar to each other. And so I don't want to be readjusting stuff. Venticus Prime. How about ghosts in the machine? Always. Alethea claims that red looks hot. I assume that's what that means. On me, it doesn't. Doesn't it make me look kind of weird and pale orangish? Tigerman 99515. Do you have a will? Yes, and you're in it. Oh boy. Miguel Sudorado, I caught you live. Random question. What's your dream car? My dream car would probably be a 69 Charger Daytona, Hemi 4-speed. I've seen a few of them, but to buy one will set you back. Well, the prices are fluctuating, but between $500,000 and $1 million in good condition. I prefer a red one with a white stripe, much like Bobby Isaac's race car. But like I said, it costs a lot to have, and driving it's one of those things where they're long and kind of goofy. So, Yard Boy Deuce, what's the goofiest story you have about defending a bozo in court? Most of my clients aren't bozos. If somebody strikes me as being a real out there, I mean, I turn work down. People don't believe that, but I do. I routinely turn cases down. I won't tell somebody I'm not taking your case because I think you're a bozo, but I will occasionally just say, you know something, I don't think I can help you. Sorry. Matthias, I should send you a shirt with the battleship Bismarck. Yes, you should. If Matthias, if you can send me a shirt that double XL, and if there's a conversion problem with that, figure it out. I'm a husky fellow. If you can get me a shirt about the battleship Bismarck, I will send you a book, despite the fact that sending you the book will cost you more than the book is worth. But I will do that. So if you can, if you got questions or comments, email me directly and say, hey, Steve, this is Matthias. How do I get you a shirt? And we'll go from there. Don't joke with me about that, my friend. There's my email address. I've actually read several books about the battleship Bismarck, including read a book written by the highest ranking survivor of the ship. In fact, I reread it about just a couple months ago. Love that book. So jumped on me. I got to get back to David Persons. Do you have any Mont Blanc pens or other luxury pens? No. In fact, I use pens like they're tools, meaning that I just grab a pen, and I love these Uniball pens, blue ones. But other than that, and I also have to have a Sharpie on my desk just in case. But no, I actually know guys. I know people who like are into collector pens and all this stuff, and just it doesn't do that. Yardboy Deuce says Steve doesn't look fat. This is a double X, but I'm also tall. Okay, that's my excuse. The Prodigal Stranger. Do you have a release date for the Winged Car book? Well, that would be a reprint because the book's out of print. And I have not got an official date on that because I would have to do it with my own money, which I might do. But I have so many other things going on right now that I don't want to be trying to promote the upcoming Turbine Car update book and sell a bunch of books I just printed with my own money and have stacked out in my garage, So Mine Ben says you might get a lot of Bismarck shirts now. Well, the question is whether they're coming from Germany. Matthias says, but the shirts are white with the Battleship Bismarck. They don't make them on another color? Okay, here's the deal, dude. If you can get me a Battleship Bismarck shirt and it's white, I will wear it. I will actually say, in case this screws up your the color on your screen, I'm apologizing, but I got the shirt from Germany. Showstrom, is Bismarck the ship that just wouldn't die? No. The Bismarck died. It died a very, very ugly death. The Bismarck was a ship that basically was at sea for 9 days. In fact, it's a book called The Last 9 Days of the Bismarck. And the Bismarck sailed out into the North Atlantic. And in the process, the British scrambled everything they could to try to stop it from getting out there. And they got into a duel, the Bismarck and the Hood. And one of those situations where two huge ships are lobbing shells at each other from like 10 or 12 miles away. And the Bismarck hit the Hood in such a way that it almost disintegrated very, very quickly. Very, very, almost freakish how fast it happened. And there were only 3 survivors from the Hood. And then at that point, you think the British were pissed off before that? You ain't seen nothing yet. And they basically just said, we don't care what it takes, sink the Bismarck, and sent everything and wound up just pummeling it. And there's a whole story behind the damage that was inflicted upon it. And strangely, one of the things that played a huge role in its sinking was old-fashioned torpedo planes that people were thinking might be obsolete. And it turns out that one of them put a torpedo into the rudder system and got the rudder locked in a bad position. And that's one of the things that happened that spelled its doom. And a few hundred people survived the sinking of the Bismarck. And like I said, the highest ranking survivor wrote a book about it. And it's a fascinating book because the guy was there. In fact, he was assigned to the boat before it was finished. It was being built. He showed up while they're building it. And so he got to walk all around it. And on a boat that size, on a ship that size, someone's going to complain. On a ship that size, that thing had 4 gigantic, gun turrets with these huge guns. And he was in charge of one of those gun turrets. And the way it works on a ship that size is it's a fairly high-ranking officer who's in charge of that gun turret. And that was his role. So it's fascinating. But Art S. Steve's no list. No pens, no pocket watches, no foreign cars. When I went down to see Vin Wiki, Ed Bolian, and tell stories, I told a story, and I talked a bit about my the fact I've never owned a foreign car, and I mentioned the fact that I'm going to get grief from people and be like, "Oh, so you think I'm evil because I bought a foreign car?" I didn't say that. I just said I've never bought one. You can do whatever you want. I don't care. Walk. I don't care. And off camera, Ed and I were laughing about it because He's like, no, I know how the internet works. Of course. Daniel Kessler says, yeah, Jonathan Horton sink the Bismarck. MD Hofsty says a YouTube proposes the HMS Hood was sunk due to wave effect and a shell hit below the armor belt and impacted the shell powder storage rooms. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of. Originally, people were saying, well, obviously they're so far apart, they're lobbing shells like this. It's almost like a mortar arc. And if it would come down, it would come through the deck and penetrate the deck and explode underneath. But they said, no, based on the distance, the shells were still doing this. And so they think that there was a shell that hit the side, and I've seen several different explanations for that, but hit the side and just happened to hit the side near the powder rooms where the gunpowder is kept. Whether it's gunpowder or not, I don't know, but the explosive charges. But the ship went up very, very fast. And it was one of those things. And what's amazing, and you'd think with history that old, we would have known it all, seen it all, and heard it all by now. And somebody located a film, it's probably 10, 20 years ago now, but that some German officer on board, I believe the Prince Eugen, which was accompanying the Bismarck, was filming the engagement. And you can see the Bismarck, and it's clear the Bismarck launching, these massive salvos. And they know from the timing of it all that one of these salvos is being filmed with a handheld movie camera in 1941, is recording the launching of the shell that exploded the hood. It's just crazy to think about. Oh, the Prodigal Stranger says, sorry, but the Lehto books got mixed up. When is the updated Turban Car book coming out? Okay. September or October. Yes, signed books will be available. I will get a mountain of them, and we'll do that. Eletheus is cannons. I'm going to point out two things. One is that you can also say cannon for plural, 5 cannon, 8 cannon, or cannons plural. You can do that too. But on a ship that size, we still refer to those as guns, and that's just a technical term. So when you think of big boats firing big shells, they're firing from guns. But yeah. DePaul says, remember the sinking of the Bismarck? Yeah. Mexican Specs says, how did hundreds of people survive the sinking? Don't they go down when the ship goes down? Well, there comes a time when the ship is taken on water and you're ankle deep or knee deep in water that you might say, well, instead of going down the ship, I'm just going to step over here and swim a little bit. But when that ship sank, there were actually quite a few people in the water who did not survive. But that's a whole nother story. As Mustang MG05 points out, it sank because it failed to maintain buoyancy, which, of course, would also explain the sinking of the Titanic. And Tigerman 995 says big boats are ships. Yeah, and I said boat several times, but that's just I corrected at one point. I'm just talking here, but and we've had this discussion before because I often thought that ships were simply large enough to have boats on them, like lifeboats. But then, of course, a U-boat, a submarine, is often referred to as a boat. It's a U-boat, okay? And so some of these things are custom and usage. And I've also heard people say that, well, when you go to turn it, which way does it tip? Yeah, Daniel Kessler says the Big Bertha was still called the Big Gun. The Big Gun. That thing was surprisingly accurate, by the way. Johnny Knoxville says, when the skies of November turn gloomy with a load of iron ore, 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed empty. Oh, yeah, there's a song about that sinking also. A little more recent. I remember when that one went down. John N. Jr. says, we have the USS Lexington here in Corpus Christi. Showstrom says, when the ship is sinking, you chug some water, eat a little food, and grab some valuable lightweight stuff you can take with you. Yeah, and that's the crazy thing. You hear about the sinking of the Indianapolis, the ship that was sunk by a Japanese submarine towards the end of the war. and the Americans didn't notice it was missing due to, in essence, a clerical error by a harbor master where it was supposed to show up. When somebody realized it was missing, they went looking for it, and there's guys in the water who'd been like treading water or hanging on to stuff or just and gruesome shark attacks and all kinds of. But you're in the water trying to stay alive, dying of thirst, and yeah, you know, we take this stuff too lightly when it comes out of the wall in a faucet, you know. Daniel Kester says, yes, difference is you can put a boat on a ship, but you can't put a ship on a boat. Irie, is there a Navy boat named Michigan? I'm sure there is. I remember they got all kinds of classes of ships. They've got everything from destroyers all the way up. And I've seen some really odd ones. And you're like, really? They named a ship after that? So, yes, the USS Michigan, SSGN 727 class, but the USS Michigan. So, knew it. Ronald Watilko, my grandfather made steel plates for the Edmund Fitzgerald at Zug Island. Yeah, Zug Island is an island in the Detroit River off of the city of Detroit, where a lot of the iron ore that's being brought by the ships, like the Edmund Fitzgerald, coming from either Minnesota or the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, would bring it, offload it, and there's a couple plants down there. Like I think U.S. Steel's got a presence down there. So MD Hofsty says that is a former Boomer, Ohio class. Yeah, Jerry Dodson, don't forget about Bodie McBoatface. They ran an internet contest to name a ship, and Bodie McBoatface won. And somebody said, well, we can't do that. Let's just call it, I think it was the Attenborough. And it's like, wait, but you had a contest. Doesn't the winner win? No. Don't forget Peekaboo Street, the skier, was named that by her sister, who was a child at the time. They said, what do you want to name your sister? She goes, hey, Peekaboo, because I like Peekaboo. They named the kid Peekaboo. She's stuck with it now. So Steve now says the USS Michigan is a nuclear-powered submarine. Little clarification there. Oh, Art S says, yeah, Jaws. Don't forget the old guy character, the fingernails and the chalkboard guy, is an Indianapolis survivor. I forgot about that little factoid. Okay. JB6789, my uncles were both sunk at Guadalcanal. The USS Preston, a destroyer. Younger brother was in the water for 20 hours in shark-infested water, staying in the oil slick saved him. That's crazy. That's crazy. Javier, were you ever a Boy Scout? No. And you know, it's interesting. I didn't know many Boy Scouts. It was one of those things that wasn't big in my neighborhood. None of my brothers did it. Just never did it. John Michael Karma, Zug Island. Been there. The place is rust red. I was at Zug Island as a child, probably 8 or 9 years old, on board an iron ore boat because my uncle worked on one, and got permission to have my mom bring her boys with her, and we all went over there and got to go on board the ship. And as a little kid, I remember looking at this thing going, this thing's like the size of like a couple city blocks. It's huge, huge. Matthias is the best ship name is the Unsinkable 2. Oh. Patrick Mulcahy says, in the Navy, we call our aircraft carrier a boat. Okay. Yeah, I think it's also one of those things whether it's casual or not. If it's casual, you know. Oh, Two Left Thumb says that David Attenborough does carry a boat called Bodie McBoatface. So in honor of that, as like an honorable mention, he decided to name one of the lifeboats Bodie McBoatface, I guess. Codemeister Beat says factoid originally meant a piece of information that's not true. And I've had people get very upset with me for saying factoid about something that is true. And I believe it's fallen into use where it is now, according to the Oxford, a brief or trivial item of news or information. And so whether it's true or not, I have a feeling that it's drifted over time. Kind of like decimate. Decimate means to reduce something by 10%. That's it. Deci. That's the prefix. So if I have 100 of something and I decimate it, it's 90. That's a reduction by 10%. And it goes back to the Roman times. And so they'll go, oh, this thing got decimated, meaning it got destroyed. No, that decimated would be reduced by 10%. But it's become that over time. So Mexican Spec, if you had any clients trying to get a 2024 Dodge Charger RT bought back. Whew, I'm not sure. That does not ring a bell. I mean, once in a while I get one of these, one of those, but it's certainly not like a wave of them or anything like that. DePaul, 31. My brother served on the USS Detroit, a fast frigate. Nenson Dubois says, whether a factoid is a factoid or not is a factoid. That's very meta. It's almost ironic. Steve, a common factoid is that the Great Wall of China is visible from space, but it's not. Yeah, I've heard that too. Is Johnny Knoxville in the house? How you doing, my friend? Good to see you. Jason Brindamar says, my dad served in Vietnam on the Newport News. Yeah, it's one of those names I never quite understood. Newport. I'm sure there's an origin to it. Newport News. For the two says if you decimate over and over, 90 becomes 81, and then a little less than 73. But the point is you'll never get to zero. It's that paradox. Oh, Two Left Thumbs says Boating Boatface might be a submersible, not necessarily a lifeboat or anything manned. Boy. Going back to phones, people. David Zaradnansky says decimate means to reduce to 10%, not by 10%. I just looked it up. Historical, to kill 1 in every 10. To kill 1 in every 10 would be reducing by 10%. So, anyway. Johnny Quest points out that Chief Bodie was correct. They did need a bigger boat. Robert Hawkshurst, I almost take it for granted with your admiration of the Bismarck. Have you seen Battleship New Jersey and YouTube and so on? Yes, I have. Yes, I have. I haven't seen it in person, but I've seen those videos. I am fascinated by I'm fascinated by a lot of war stuff, not just the German stuff or anything like that. I mean, I'm Finnish background, so I would not have a German connection there. But I found I like first person biographies. Of not a biography of not an autobiography, but the story someone tells where they were there by either side, so. Daniel Kester, hey, Steve, I'm putting a package of shirts for you on as a shirt with my bowling team name on it. Okay. The Pin Pals. Oh boy! Iris says the Kalamazoo sounds like a party boat. Yeah, they should run it around in downtown Nashville. Johnny Knoxville says Ford's Mustang did pretty good at Nürburgring last night, but was no match for Porsche and the BMW. I suspect that the Europeans are better at handling than Americans are. I just I think most Americans still think, just point it straight and floor it. So On Point says, love the Electro Voice RE20 microphone. Thank you. So do I. I've got two of them. I got that one. I got that one. Oh, I almost did it. Right there. Right there. It's my monitor's backwards, so I don't. It's backwards when I'm imagining. Llama, did any of your ancestors serve in the Finno-Korean hyperwar? I'm not even sure what that is. My ancestors left Finland in the late 1800s or extremely early 1900s. So they would not even have been involved in World War II. So. Caleb Seelan is sending a letter your way from Alaska. I'll be watching for it. Dr. Rick, great to see you on the sunny summer afternoon. As it is right now, again, we'll check in on the weather. 91 degrees and just sunshine. It is oppressive outside in southern Michigan. They've got heat advisories all the way through Tuesday. Get me a gator. Have you visited the Finnish Hall on Sugar Island? No. I visited a bunch of Finnish club type things. There's the Finnish Center in Farmington Hills, Michigan. There's two Finnish places I've been to in Florida. And I've been to a couple Finnish halls in the UP, but not Sugar Island. I've been to Nebish Island. I know there's a big Finnish presence on Sugar Island, though. Oh, On Point says, sorry, greetings, Jeff in Denver. I'm a radio guy. So am I. DePaul, the USS Intrepid Museum ship in Midtown Manhattan is cool. I've not seen that one either. Although I always like the name, the USS Intrepid. Intrepid. Oh, boy. Kip Marlesko, 2. Did your grandparents still speak Finnish and not learn English until the first grade? How about let's try my parents? My parents spoke Finnish in the household and spoke English at school. I'm not sure if my parents were taught English by their parents or not. I'll have to ask my father. But I know that like my grandparents all spoke English, but like my grandmother's English was sketchy at best. I'm talking about my mother's mother. My father's mother taught college. She taught English. She taught, I believe, German, Latin, Finnish. And, so she spoke very, very good English. But in the house, they spoke Finnish. They spoke Finnish. There's no question they spoke Finnish. And so that's a fairly common thing. I have a lot of friends from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan who still speak with a very, very heavy accent. And it's because they spoke so much Finnish that it influences the pronunciation of English. Shex Densmore, does your mic capture your voice accurately? I believe so. And by the way, I'm not running my voice through anything. And I've I know some people who are clearly using, like, say, compression. Hey, Johnny Knoxville, GR is Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids is a big town over here in Michigan. One of the largest towns in Michigan. I tell people often that Grand Rapids is what Detroit wishes it was, because Detroit, Grand Rapids is cleaner and nicer, I think, in terms of how it looks. Okay. Tigerman 99515. Isn't there a German U-boat at the Chicago Museum? Yes, the U-505. I've been on it a couple times. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. But I was just saying something else and got distracted when Johnny asked what GR stood for. Oh, boy. Blah, blah, blah. I've always been curious why someone who's lived in America for 30 years still has an accent from the old country. The language skills you learn as a youngster become extremely ingrained in you, and they will stay with you. It's tough to lose an accent. So, oh, Johnny Knoxville says that he's been through Grand Rapids. Okay. Kit Marlowe Esco, it was annoying when they would start arguing in Yiddish. My parents didn't argue in Finnish, but they would talk about us in Finnish because it was the equivalent of talking about us behind our backs, but they're talking about us in front of our fronts. Steve, can you translate more cowbell into Latin? I bet someone could do it, but I'll tell you right now, we can always use more cowbell. David Phillips, have you been to the USS Silversides in Muskegon? No, I have not. Yeah, Mark Miller says you're discussing filtering your voice. I've heard people who use various compressions and things to make their voices sound better. And one of my favorite YouTubers, I got to see if I can send him a note and say, by the way, can you help me with this? I'm curious. How do you get that great quality to your voice? And because I'm sure he's running his voice through something, but it doesn't sound artificial. It just sounds like it's been recorded really, really well. Yeah, Johnny Knoxville, it's 90 degrees right now in Bad Axe. The real feel is 103. I went through Bad Axe a couple weeks ago. I was going up to Port Austin. My brother's band was playing up there at Port Austin at the farmer's market. And I went up and saw him play, and on the way back, stopped for lunch in Bad Axe. I'd love to go up there and drive around and just see the old sites. D Wood, there's never enough cowbell. No, there isn't. You can always use more cowbell. Really explore the space. Jason Brindamar, you obviously have a low cut filter on for sure. Well, I have the bass roll off into the normal position. But if I was on the radio right now, I'd flip that switch and I'd stop moving from side to side because of the proximity effect. Again, for the three people know what I'm talking about. Tigerman99515 says, what's that thing the Finns do sitting around with no pants on? I forgot what the word is, but there's a long Finnish word because a lot of Finnish words are long. And it literally means to be sitting around, like lazing around in your underwear. Like you're not doing it to be sexy. You're not doing it because you can't afford pants. You're just kind of lazing around, probably drinking, I think, and in your underwear. So Beep Boop Bot says the crackling is gone now. Again, I've done nothing. I've done nothing. Shex Densmore, how do you compress your voice? Like, what does that mean? Well, Johnny Knoxville says, I was on the Colorware website last night. They custom color Shure mics. Oh, I like Rush Limbaugh had one of these gold plated, you know. I like this gray though, because to me, I turned it, didn't I? This gray is the color that I think of when I think of an RE20. So I'm not sure if I can make it blue like my logo, I'd consider doing that. But otherwise, no. But compression, I'm not an audio guy, but compression basically makes the sound fuller. And I don't know how else to describe it. I should get my friend David Dominic Fowler in here. He could explain it. He's the guy who's the guitar player in Aussie, Pink Floyd. But Bob Blah Blah says, I always thought your microphone was green. This is one of those arguments that could divide the internet. But gray, green, it's one of those things like that. Remember that blue gold dress? Of course we do. This is really, really close to being a greenish color, like almost like an olive drab, but not quite. But I guess it depends on what colors it's up against. But it's to me, it's more of a grayish, greenish. Don't know what to call it, but they've always been this color. Bernadine Sackinger says half nude and drinking sounds universal. I won't ask you why you think that, but but I will tell you that the Finns have a word for it. That's the key. It's half nude and drinking it. You can go sit in your underwear, but do you have a word for it? And that was the point. Yeah, DePaul 31 says RE20s also come in black. I don't remember there being a choice of colors. I like it just because it's neutral. So no matter what shirt I wear, it's not going to show up because I don't have any shirts that color. Oh, Nelson Dubois. It's a gray area. It is a gray area. This whole thing is a gray area. Luis Rodriguez, I thought you lose sound quality when you compress something. Not if it's done right. You can you can make it so the stuff you lose isn't good. You know. Techno Way says, hi, everyone. Steve Lehto, thank you for creating such a great YouTube channel. I'm a semi-retired engineer, and I know relatively little about the law, which is great because I know relatively little about engineering. But thank you. It's always great to have you join. I appreciate that. Yeah, DePaul says olive drab, and that might be a good one. Yeah, Greg Hansen said it was the golden EIB, or the Excellence in Broadcasting microphone. Oh, Tim Nossum, did you get the belt back on your riding mower? Yes, I did. I watched a video on how to get the belt back on your lawnmower, Cub Cadet specifically. And there's two plastic covers you remove, and that exposes the parts of the belt that you can't normally see that well. And the belt wasn't broken; it had simply popped off. And I think something had gotten in there and jammed and popped it off. So then you got to make sure you line it up with all the right pulleys. And then you take a ratchet, and I forgot what size it was, but you put a ratchet with a big long bar on it, and you pull on this one thing, and it's the tensioner. And you pull the tensioner back, put the belt on, and start releasing it to make sure that the belts are in all the right valleys. And once it's back in place, it looked good to me. I fired the mower up, engaged it. It ran fine. Put the covers back on. Boom. Been fixed ever since. I've probably ridden it 10 hours since then. So, Tech No Way appreciated the gray area comment. Oh, boy. Sam as I am says no quality loss. Compression is used on just about every recording you ever heard. And it's been used more and more and more lately. That's the biggest change in music, say, between the 60s and the 90s, is heavy use of compression. Daniel Kester says my favorite World War II plane was the Corsair. Corsairs are cool planes, very cool planes. But there are quite a few cool planes. Believe in yourself. I love the smell of a two-stroke in the morning. I had a four-stroke going this morning. I actually fired up. I've got a little corner of my yard that floods, and we got 2 inches of rain yesterday morning. 2 inches in 1 hour, and so I had to fire the little pump up and pump it out. Shex Densmore, do you have a garden mower or a zero turn? Right now, I've got a tractor, so I have trouble going around the trees. I'm going to get a zero turn because there's sections of the yard where I can just zoom, especially if I got a really, really wide cutting swath from it. Dan Boyd, I'm going to try to put a new clutch and transmission into a Kenmore washer. My brother was telling me he's got a washer and a dryer that are older than time itself. And I forgot what the part is, but there's a plastic part in there that wears out. And when it happens, he goes, I know what the problem is. He's got a few of them, and he goes, every, 5 years or something, he pulls out the old part, put a new part, and boom, you're good for another 5 years. So Get Me a Gator says, saw an autonomous mower last week. Was it owned by somebody or just going rogue? Mike Lackner, I remember the first serpentine belt I ever replaced in the 70s. I couldn't get it straight in my brain for a long time. It's weird. And I mean, I on my Cub Cadet, you pop the hood, the covering up, and it's got a diagram of the belt pattern in there. And my first thought was, if that belt came off or it broke, I'm in trouble. So Showstrom, have you ever had to deal with blackberry bushes growing on your property? No. I've got some stuff that's iffy, but I have a couple of really cool pieces of equipment. I've got a brush cutter made by Steel, and it's like a weed whacker, but it's got a buzz saw blade on it about that big, and it will go through branches that thick. And so I can go into the brush. I'm covered. Okay, pants, long sleeves, hat, eyewear, gloves. The only exposed skin is usually up here somewhere. But I saw the stuff down to the ground, clean it all out, wood chip it because I have a wood chipper, and then I try to make it where I can mow it with my mower. And then eventually it'll become grass. But I have both poison ivy and poison oak on my property, and I've gotten them both. And neither are fun. And if I get poison ivy that's more than just a speck, I then got to actually go to a doctor and get prescriptions for it, because otherwise it gets worse and gets worse, and it's bad. It's one of the few times I'm like, up, off to the doctor. I'm not even gonna wait. I know what it is. Steve, I bought an electric push mower. I got a little bit too much space to do that. Robert Peralta, hello, Steve. Hope all is well. Everything's good. Everything's good. Although, as I pointed out earlier, it is now 91 degrees F, 91, and it's not supposed to be cooler until Tuesday when it gets down into the 80s. Johnny Knoxville never had poison ivy. That's one of those things where it is, in fact, it's an allergy. So some people it doesn't bother at all. But I don't remember having it until I was an adult. But I've had it a couple times bad. I've had one of my brothers get poison ivy on his arm, and he had a cut or a scratch, and he got it into his arm, and his arm swelled up like Popeye, and he had to go to the hospital. But I go to the doctor, go, poison ivy. He looks at it, he goes, yep, you're right. Writes me this prescription. Boom. I race to the store, get it filled, and it's going away quickly. Daniel Kessler says, don't burn poison ivy. Don't burn poison oak, because that's the kind of thing where if it heats and smokes and gets into the air and you breathe it, it's bad. Jerry Dodge had poison ivy so bad my eyes were swollen shut. Had to stay home from school. Wow. Tiger Man says, all that equipment sounds like you're having fun. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, someone called me last week and said, Steve, do you have a chainsaw handy? And I said, yes, obviously. I've got something in my front yard, and I'm like, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And that's because it took me 4.5 minutes to finish what I was doing, run and put my shoes on, go grab my stuff, and get over there. And I was disappointed. It was only one branch that had cracked about yay thick. It took me about, 30 seconds to cut it. And then I diced it up a little bit. But, once in a while you start looking for stuff to chop up, Mark Miller says mosquitoes are also an allergy. But how bad? Like if I get bitten by a mosquito, I will feel it and I'll see a little welt. And if I don't scratch it, which is hard to do, but I don't scratch it, it'll go away. But I remember as a little kid just scratching them, and you'd have them for the longest time. And I'll tell you right now, it's not mosquitoes that bug me. It's the deer flies. And they're these flies that we get when they land on you. They don't just, like a mosquito, they have teeth or something, because they bite you and you can bleed from one of their bites. And I was out in my yard doing something last week, and I felt something on I looked down, and it's a fly, and I whacked it. I thought I killed it in time. My wrist, the back of my wrist, had a mark on it for like a week. It hurts. I'm like, oh, so. Elatheus is the amount of tropical, like spiky stuff that grows around where I live is crazy. Weeds or just like wild stuff or what? D. Corbett says you can get it from throwing it in the wood chipper. Yeah, I'm careful. Because I know what I've got with all the stuff out in my yard. So when I'm chopping stuff down, preparing to use the wood chipper, if I'm chopping stuff down, I look to make sure it didn't fall in any poison ivy or poison oak. Because if it did, I got to be careful. Johnny Knoxville sprayed his yard for mosquitoes before they hatched. Yeah, mosquitoes are a function of water, of rain. And the other thing is, believe it or not, there's a period in the summertime where if you get a heavy rain, 24 to 48 hours later, you get fireflies. Fireflies. So I assure you that tonight, tomorrow night, will be fireflies all over the place. Guaranteed. So Douglas Gaxiola got some poison ivy in 2009 so bad it blistered and gave him scars he has to this day. Wow. Jerry Dodge, I strangely rarely face mosquitoes lately, even in Kalamazoo or Portage with lakes and rivers. Yeah, because it's a function, like I said, of water, but it's often standing water or slow moving water. You won't necessarily get mosquitoes from a fast moving river, but if there are little pools off the river or puddles, those kinds of things can create the perfect environment for them. Gotham Networks points out that the mosquitoes will then suck back up the anticoagulant, which causes the itch, if you give them time to do it. And therein lies the question. A mosquito's biting you, and you can see him literally blood sucking. Do you let him go so it won't itch, or do you kill him for the outrage of him doing that to you? So there you go. Johnny Quest, lightning bugs, fireflies, yeah. Rick Yannick says dragonflies eat mosquitoes. Yeah, dragonflies are one of those insects that are very, very good. Same thing with ladybugs. Also are good insects to have around if you got a garden. Drew Edmonds, the Poison Ivy song by the Coasters. Obi-Wan Benobi, we've had good rains and plenty of fireflies southwest of Saginaw. Where are you? What's the town closest to you southwest of Saginaw? I've worked in Saginaw before. I worked at WKNX Saginaw years and years and years ago. Jerry Dodge, I'll admit, I was one of those kids who used to collect fireflies and smash their butts for the glow. You got to time it just right. I've driven through a cloud of fireflies before and had a bunch hit the windshield that was still glowing. It's kind of weird. Glenn Lego, does poison ivy have leaves that turn red in autumn? I'm not sure. I try to avoid the stuff so much. So Dan Boyd says put oil in the standing water and the mosquitoes will lay their eggs in it and the babies won't be able to hatch. I actually saw something on the internet, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but they were dropping male mosquitoes someplace in Hawaii in the hopes that the male mosquitoes, which were sterile for some reason, would mate with the female mosquitoes and therefore their offspring wouldn't survive. Which seems like a really complicated plan, which I'm certain is going to backfire. It reminds me of the episode of The Simpsons where Bart winds up raising those eggs that turn out to be the lizards. And of course, the lizards escape, but then we can, of course, bring in the Chinese needle snakes. And then those will be killed by the mountain gorillas, which will then get killed off by the wintertime. Because that's how you do it. Randy Regal says, I've never had poison ivy. I've helped people clear brush. They got covered, but I was fine, which means you're probably not allergic to it. I remember being on someone's property where I got poison ivy and they'd never gotten it. Whoa. For the first time, I whacked something off camera. It wasn't the microphone. I don't know. Why was I doing that? But I was helping somebody clear their property, and I got poison ivy, and I didn't see it, and they never got anything. And they go, no, I never get anything. Well, they're not allergic to it. That's all. G Keyman 565 says, hello, Steve Lehto. I think my AC is broken. You think or you know? Today's the day where you would know. Wally says, we do the sterile males for many species, and it works. Dropping them out of helicopters? I'm sure it does. It just seems like I understand why they don't want to carpet bomb the place with, insecticide. I understand that. It just struck me as interesting. Let's put it that way. Jerry Dodge says I actually have more of a problem with mayflies. There is a problem with, is it mayflies or fish flies, or what are those flies that get along down over here along the river? There's a couple towns where there's so many fish flies, mayflies, whatever they are. They're a little bit bigger, but they're clouds of them, clouds of them. And I remember going to court over there one time, driving through clouds of these things. But apparently it's only like a few days every year. So Obi-Wan Kenobi, black flies are horrible. I lived in the UP for 15 years. Yeah, there are some big flies up there too. If you're there in August, if they've had a wet spring or wet summer, you get up there kind of late in the year. Oh my gosh, they can get bad. Lazy Boy Gamer says friends said they see those flies up in St. Ignace. They're also along the lower edge of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, along US 2. I forget what time of the year it was. I think it may have been June. Driving along at night and seeing clouds of these big flies. I'd never seen them before, but I guess people who live there, because there's a section of the northern tip of Lake Michigan and probably also Lake Huron where the beach is really, really shallow. And the water is shallow and it goes out quite a ways before the water gets very deep. And I think that they reproduce there or something. So Mike Torello's got to run. Always an enjoyable time. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. Obi-Wan says mayflies were so thick once I ran out of windshield washer fluid. I pulled over, used my T-shirt and rubbing alcohol to clean my windshield. And then I presume you threw that shirt away. Bob Blah says Collier County, Florida has planes fly a grid monthly releasing insecticide. For my friends in Southern California who are out there in the 1990s, remember the Mediterranean fruit flies? They were so worried about the Mediterranean fruit fly getting into the crops in California that they were spraying malathion from helicopters. And I lived not far from where the helicopters would take off in the morning and land. It was like being in Apocalypse Now with these helicopters flying over my house in the morning. And they would actually tell you what day they're doing your neighborhood, because they would tell you things like, try not to be outside, try not to get sprayed, try not to let your car get hosed down with this stuff. And it's like, but if I park outdoors, what do I do? But they'd fly over your neighborhood 50 times, but then one day they're doing your neighborhood. And I had a professor in law school who said, by the way, if you ever really want to get worried, go to a hardware store and find a bottle of insecticide that's got malathion on it and read the label. So Johnny Knoxville ran out of washer fluid driving through Escanaba. It's a tree and bug central. Oh, boy. Shax Densmore, you get deer or horseflies? The ones I see, I think, are called deer flies. But I know, frankly, I don't care what it is. It's biting me. I want to kill it. Showstrom, imagine a marriage where one partner is allergic to poison ivy and the other is not, with the one that is not having spent a whole day in it without realizing. Well, that's why you shower when you come inside, and you also take all your clothing that goes straight in the washing machine. Straight in the washing machine. Dan Shaw says they used to track mayfly swarms by weather radar over Lake Erie. I've seen that. I've seen it this year. I've seen it this year. Padre says Yankees have no idea of the horrors of love bugs. I can tell you, though, that I can tell you the horrors of palmetto bugs. Palmetto bugs is a euphemism for a gigantic cockroach the size of a small dog. and you try to crush it with your foot and it laughs at you. And then it runs underneath your sink or your oven or your refrigerator, and you know it's there, and it knows you're there, and it doesn't care. Aaron Freeman, African or European swallows? Oh, boy. Johnny Knoxville, when I lived in Tampa, flying cockroaches everywhere. But again, the palmetto bugs are just these gigantic. I'm pretty sure I saw a palmetto bug in Nashville. Pretty sure I did. Running across the sidewalk in front of me. I'm like, oh, flashback time. Sam as I am first encountered malathion as a child when a relative who was an exterminator gave us some. He later died of liver cancer. That could just be a coincidence, but probably not. Palmetto bugs can carry your dogs away. Fool bee. Oh, Mustang MG05, the earwigs. And again, I'm not sure where they got the name from. I've never looked it up. But those are the things that have got the weird pincers on them. Oh, they look nasty. And they will pinch you with their pincers. Random someone for no other reason than I enjoy your content. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, random someone. Yeah, Brianna CC points out that Johnny Knoxville has indeed changed his picture. You're allowed to change it once in a while. I think, Brianna, haven't you changed yours? Yours looks different than I remember. Nenson Dubois got a run to go clothes shopping. Enjoy the beginning of summer, everyone. And you too, my friend. We've got a few more minutes left here, but we're going to wrap it up soon. I'm surprised I made it this far. I drove yesterday for about 13 hours, 14 hours. Real long drive. And I fell asleep last night thinking I might never wake up. I was just boom. So the fact that I've been here, already done some yard work this morning, and I've survived to do another live stream, that's a win for me. Wait, Brianna, you have not changed your thumbnail? In how long? I don't know why. I thought you had. Yeah, Janice Ellerv, you don't like lizards or bugs. And by the way, don't forget that those big iguanas were imported. Those are invasive. Those are not something that lived there naturally. And they've just run amok. And now you'll see these iguanas like this. I mean, huge iguanas. They're everywhere. So, Sam as I am, worst place I live for bugs was Houston, home of giant flying tree roaches, chiggers, fleas, and brown recluse spiders. Yeah, that's one thing that we do not have in Michigan, as far as I know, is poisonous spiders or venomous spiders, I guess. And I don't think we've got those, but who knows? Dan Boyd, I don't like spiders and snakes, but that ain't what it takes. Jim Stafford, I believe. Chief FC, I kept my picture but changed my handle. Mexican Spec, you think the lizards would take care of the bugs? No, that's the problem. The lizards are lazy. They just sit there. All they ever do is sit there. You drive down the road and you see lizards at the side of the road just sunning themselves. It's like, what do you guys do for a living? I'm sunning myself. Come back in an hour. Oh, Jerry Dodge. House centipedes, on the other hand, never saw them till I moved to Louisville. Just so you know, there are centipedes and there are millipedes. Centipedes are disgusting. I mean, all God's creatures are nice, but in context, right? I just don't want one in my bed or my bedroom or my home. It's outside. It can live all at once. But millipedes, you've got to understand there's a distinction between them. And it's not just the size, milla and centi. No. Millipedes often have, if not always, poison claws. And yes, millipedes contain poison. And so if you were to eat one, you might die. So millipedes are actually dangerous. Just thought you should know that. Bob blah blah says, he goes, I think I'm changing my name possibly to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You'd have to spell it differently to make it more interesting, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Robert Terhune, no black widows in Michigan? Not that I know of. Not that I know of. 90 Trey says spiders aren't lazy. You know, it's the lizards that are lazy. I never see lizards doing anything. And because they're cold-blooded, they should be more active during day when I can see them. I am curious. Maybe they do eat and I just don't see it. I don't know. Shex Densmore, are you joking about not having poisonous or venomous spiders in Michigan? Let me look it up. I didn't think I was joking. Maybe I'll have to say I was joking. Venomous spiders in Michigan. Well, it does say that theoretically there are, but it goes northern black widow and the brown recluse. But the thing about it is that I've never heard of them or seen them or heard anybody even talk about them. So they must not be common. So if they're out there, they're not causing much trouble. So what can I tell you? I was joking. LRG, why would you eat one? A millipede? I'm glad you asked me that. I believe, and again, this could be an urban legend, but I believe there are documented examples of animals eating something and accidentally eating a millipede. I've heard that. I've heard that, but I don't know. So again, not necessarily a human eating one, but an animal. Like I've seen cats that'll eat anything. I've seen dogs that'll eat anything. Dogs will eat stuff that is clearly not edible. They don't care. So I can picture a dog eating a millipede, not realizing that it is in fact dangerous to do so. Bob blah blah says the first rule of poisonous insects is we don't talk about poisonous insects or arachnids for that matter. Because somebody's going to go, oh, Steve, a spider is not an insect. Code Mr. Beat says the USA Black Widow is poisonous, but the Australian variant will put you in the dirt. Oh, Iris says I saw my first praying mantis in Iowa last year. It was 6 inches tall. I get praying mantises all the time. They're very, very elusive. But what's funny is if you see one from a distance, it'll just sit there. And you can walk up pretty close to them. I've gotten some pictures of a few. And in fact, I had a praying mantis on that window right there last year on the outside, though. He's like looking in at me and kind of like, what's going on in there? I'm like, but I've also seen them in my yard. Tim Nossum, is VinWiki going to be late summer, early fall? I don't think it'll take that long. I shot 10 or 11 videos. I'm the hardest working video maker you know. Other than Ed Bowling, because he's the one who's going to make the videos, but I was in them. Last time I did this with him, he put up one a month until we ran out. So I wouldn't be surprised if the first one goes up in a week or two. When they do go up, I mention it though. I'll mention it on Facebook and Twitter and so on. So if you have a Twitter account still, I'm only laughing because Twitter is kind of like Facebook. Facebook evolved from something everybody had to something people my age have, and Twitter is the same way. If you have a Twitter account, follow me on Twitter. I'm Steve Lehto, I think. What am I on Twitter? Steve Lehto? I think so. And let me see here. Yeah, I'm Steve Lehto. And follow me there. And the only thing I post, I will not fill your Twitter feed with garbage. unless you consider my show garbage. Because all I do is I post when a new video goes up or a new video. And if I'm on VinWiki, I'll also post that too. Johnny Knoxville says, I prefer MySpace. I prefer GeoCities. I have a Geo. I wish I had a GeoCities website. I don't. Tim Noss on Facebook and Twitter is for my older friends and I. Yes, that's, Padres says I have no social media apps. Well, I guess what will happen then is if you come to the live streams like this, I'll probably mention, oh, by the way, earlier this week, one of my videos on VinWiki went live. But I went there and I had a list of stories I wanted to tell, 8 or 9, and then Ed asked me a couple of questions. He goes, "Can you talk about this? Can you talk about that?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I can do that." So, Mike Lackner, AOL. I still get emails from people who have AOL addresses, so I can't make too much fun of that. Ask Jeeves. I remember when you had a website and you actually had to go and tell those people, yes, can you please look at my website and list it? And now I used to have a bulletin board I ran, and you could see who was looking at it, and it's being crawled by Google 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like a new post would go up and it would show up. Analog designer Jay Steve checking from San Clemente, California. When this ends, I'll be taking the Ford GT out for a drive. Very cool. Have fun, my friend. I'm not sure if I go for a drive today, because if I go in the Viper, I guess I go in the Viper and crank the AC. But going out in the Cobra, unless I'm moving, I'm going to be getting burned. And even if I can wear a hat, but I'm talking about just being burned from being in such hot sunlight. So, Chief FC at a GeoCities site. Don't know when it last logged in. Does GeoCities still exist? Sig226, is VinWiki located in the Nashville area? No. I went down to Georgia, and then on the way back I cut through Nashville. A little out of the way, but I cut through. I got friends in Nashville. So, yeah, Mike Lack, remember ICQ? I remember someone I know was talking about ICQ, and they go, but you can message somebody. And somebody goes, what if I don't want to be messaged? It's like having a phone. Someone can call you. What if I don't want to get called? Don't answer the phone. Bob Lablas says convertibles are good at night in the summer. That is true. Yeah, Johnny Quest, he's saying Facebook isn't where the cool kids hang out. Yeah, no, the cool kids don't hang out there. But then again, the demographic of my channel is roughly me. It's still 90% men within 10 years of my age, one direction or the other, for the most part. And then there's the long tail sticking out. MD Hofsty says, GeoCities does not exist anymore. Aw, that's so sad. Janice Ellery, you have snake cars. Yes, I do. And they're both tangentially related to Carol Shelby. Mustang MG05 said is 93 now in Bay City with full sun. I will tell you what I got. 92. And again, that's just the temperature. I guarantee you it's humid out there. And I bet it hurts. Bob blah blah. I heard young chicks dig you. You did not hear that from a young chick. Oh boy. John Knoxville. We could start channel at Lehto's Law or hashtag Lehto's Law. Jason Brindamauer, big fan of Steve, 49-year-old male. Well, that's close. If you were to graph it with bar graphs, there's the big bar graph that I'm a part of, and then as you go decades out, it starts going down. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bunch of other 40-year-olds, but 40 to 49 in the audience. But the number of teens that watch my channel is approaching 0. But I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Tim Nossman, does the Cobra have an OBD port due to its drivetrain? Probably. I've never checked. But I don't meddle with it. Bob Bong 91 in Niles, Michigan. 90 Trey, 69 in Hermosa? Is that because of cool breeze coming in off the ocean or what? Johnny Knoxville's going to go for a bike ride as soon as the sun sets. Of course, you got a problem then with the lack of light, right? Code Beaster beats him 37. There is a possibility that my live streams skew a little younger because there are people my age in the audience who don't know how YouTube actually works. And I'm just lucky they can find it at all. I've actually had someone ask me, they go, you have a you put up videos on the internet? I go, yeah, on YouTube. YouTube? Yeah, it's a website. How much does it cost? Nothing, it's free. Why do you do it? Well, I make videos and I put them up on YouTube, and if a lot of people watch them, then YouTube actually pays me. What? Why would they do that? Oh, but I had somebody actually ask me, how much do you have to pay? No, it's free. What? Not, he doesn't understand it at all. Jason Brindamar, Steve is not a mechanic. I only want to clarify this in the fact that I have mechanical abilities. I choose not to work on my cars unless it's something I can do and I have the time and I feel like it. So I have in my life changed starters, water pumps, radiators, intake manifolds. I've done a lot of that kind of stuff. But now if something goes wrong on my Viper, I call up Mark Lieberman and say, Mark, I'm bringing my Viper in so you can fix it. Because he's got certified masters on staff who've done things like that. And rather than me learning it, or I've got the manual, I could walk my way through it. Why not let someone else do it? And so there's less swearing on my part. Beep, boop, boop, bot, love Houghton, Michigan. The town of Houghton, don't forget, there's also Houghton Lake. But I wrote a book about Douglas Houghton. That's why I know all these things. The birds are free feels like 105 in Fort Wayne. Bob, blah, blah. How does it feel knowing old men are attracted to you? See, Bob, here's the deal. They're not attracted to me. They simply watch and listen to me occasionally. They might not even agree with me. But, you know, I appreciate your friendship, my friend. Mary M., 95 degrees in Washington Township, Michigan, with a feel-like temperature of 105. You know, I've lived places where they warned you about going outside, you know, like ozone alerts or whatever. And it's do I want to go someplace where it feels like 105 degrees? Where's that? Outside? Johnny Knoxville, the Midwest is going to get a scorching July, isn't it? It's starting to look that way. It's starting to look that way. My good friend JP sent me a note last week. He said, Steve, did you check out the weather for next week? And I'm like, why? What's coming? And he goes, look at this. And he sent me a screen grab of Michigan with the predicted temperatures. And I'm like, oh, I hadn't seen that. I'm not sure how, because I'm sure it was all over the news. But yeah, and we're having it right now. So I don't mind the heat, actually. It was the 2 inches of rain we got yesterday. That bothered me because that can cause problems. 105, stay inside. Okay, there you go. Matthias, have to go. Have a nice evening. Again, Matthias, if you can get me the Bismarck shirt, we got to talk. Otherwise, everyone else, thank you so much for being here. I'm amazed that I made it for 2 hours, considering how long I was in the car yesterday. I could barely walk. I got out of my car yesterday. I'm like walking around like Frankenstein on drugs. So I will talk to you guys like I always do during the week. Also, the live stream coming up, and I might do a pop-up Wednesday, Thursday. We'll see how that goes. Otherwise, I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks, Bob. Bye-bye.